In this lesson, we're going to be talking about auditing and logging. Most systems that you'll run across have the ability to do some level of logging, meaning applications and the operating system can write out messages to files so that you can do troubleshooting or debugging or just generally figure out what's going on. Now, from the perspective of ethical hacking or penetration testing, there's a couple of reasons to be aware of auditing and logging. One of them is being aware that activities that you perform on systems are probably going to get logged. If they get logged, there's a possibility that they can be detected at some point. So you need to know where logs are on different types of systems so that you can clean those logs so that your activities aren't detected anymore. So we're going to start on a Linux system here. Logs are typically stored in the directory /var/log. And the reason for that is, from a historical perspective, the /var file system, or mount point in the file system, is where variable data gets stored. So since logs are written to on a regular basis, and certainly their size can change pretty dramatically, those would get written out to /var. And you can see here the types of log files that are stored. Files that you may particularly be interested in would be, for example, syslog. These are all protected files, so I need administrative privileges. So I'm going to run sudo, and I'm going to take a look at the syslog file. Now you can see all of the messages that are in syslog, and you can see some cron messages and some dynamic host client. So DHCP client messages are in here, and if we skim up, there continue to be those types of messages. Another file that you may find interesting is the auth log. Now that would have information about authentication that happens, and you can see here the use of sudo commands, and also there's some cron messages in here, and there would be information about when users logged in, and you can see here some SSHD messages. Now, different types of Unix or Linux systems may use different file names, syslog and auth.log. The syslog file may be called messages. You may also find one called security, which may have some of the information that we're seeing here in the auth log. Now, the dmessage file is all of the kernel messages. So I can cat the dmessage file, and you can see all of the messages that the kernel has spit out. Now, I could also accomplish the same thing by running the command dmessage. And all that does is it prints out the information from, in this case, the dmessage log. So that's Linux or Unix-like systems. And again, those are in /var/log. Different flavors of Linux and different versions of Unix may have file names that are a little bit different, but if you look around a little bit, you'll pretty quickly become acclimated to the types of data that you're going to see in the different logs and which log file you're going to be finding the information you're looking for in. Let's move on to the Mac OS now. Very similarly to Linux that we just looked at, primarily because it's a Unix-like operating system, you'll see this console, and on the left-hand side you can see the files that we are looking at. I can look at diagnostic and usage messages, and you'll see these are some application-specific messages here. I can look at user diagnostic reports, system diagnostic reports, and those have to do with application crashes. I can clear the display, I can hide the log list. What this really is just a graphical interface to the types of data or the specific data that we were looking at in Linux in the various files in /var/log. On Windows, we're talking about something a little bit different. we are looking at something called the Event Viewer. And I want to look at Windows logs here. And you can see my application log. And here's a lot of different application messages. Most of these are information, although there's a couple of error messages. There's a lot of different reasons for logging messages to a log file. In general, as people are writing applications, having some sort of trail from the application as to what it's doing is a really useful idea. Sometimes things just break, and you want to be able to have a place to go figure out why it broke, and going to the logs is a really useful thing to do. Now, much like the Macintosh, Windows is really pulling up basically text files that are sitting on the disk and presenting them in a way that makes them easier to understand. You can see here in the security log, we've got some keywords called audit success, and this is where we get into more specifics about auditing. Under Windows, you can set up policies about things that you want to audit. For example, I could set up an audit for failures on logins. I can set up audits for success or failures on object or file access. And what that does is it generates log messages when those activities happen, whether it's a success or a failure. So you can see here that I've got a success audit turned on for logons. So I can see that I've done some logons and tells me the computer and some different information about it. Now, Windows isn't the only system that has auditing capabilities. Any system that will do logging has auditing capabilities. With Windows, it's called out specifically in their policy managers where you can turn on auditing of events. But going back to the logging, as you can see, the Windows logs are broken up into application, security, setup, and here's one called forwarded events that would come from other systems. We also have applications and services logs, and you can see hardware events and then a log from Internet Explorer, a key management log, Media Center, and Windows PowerShell. They all have their own individual logs. So no matter what system that you are talking about, there's probably some sort of logging involved with it. Now, whether you want to extract information from the logs that may be useful to you to perform some other activity, or whether you want to hide something that you've done editing logs, here's a few different examples of logs on different operating systems.